announce that we are not pulling out of Afghanistan. Let me also say the Democratic debate just took place,
Yes.
which was full of lofty ideals of, of economic justice and racial justice. But there it was, taking place at the luxury hotel in Las Vegas of the Wynn. Talk about big corrupt developers. So it tells you about the disconnect here, that there are the words and then there's the reality.
No, absolutely.
Furthermore, it became clear not only in that debate, I don't know if you watched it, but Bernie was kind of positioning himself for an appointment in the Clinton administration, if you noticed. And
really?
Oh yeah.
Which
Bernie? Well, he gave a big. He was sort of running interference for Hillary.
Yes.
And running interference on a couple issues on the emails and a few other things. And it became, Hillary was the dominant voice in the debate. Certainly is being declared the winner by the corporate media.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
By the corporate media. And, who was it that filled the audience? It was not coincidence that this was taking place in Las Vegas. There aren't a lot of Bernie supporters. The audiences are created in order to, send a message, as much as the message of the candidates who are basically handpicked by a corporate finance system for who's going to run for office, although Bernie's been able to fight his way through that, which is wonderful. But the system is designed with a kill switch to stop progressive voices, and that is in the form of the Super Tuesday, which you need big corporate money in order to fight, and then the super delegates. And then there are also the smear campaigns of the DNC. You may remember Jesse Jackson was basically stopped in his tracks by a smear campaign that basically made him out to be an anti-Semite who didn't support Israel, because we all have to support Israel while they conduct their horrific war criminal acts on the Palestinians. So you could see the writing on the wall in the Democratic debate that Bernie's days are numbered. Not everybody's going to follow Bernie into the Democratic Party.
That is a question.
And this is why what we're doing in our race is really important, because if we build it, they will come. And, so in part, it's really important to get that word out that people, may be supporting Bernie, which is great. He's doing really important stuff. I don't agree with him on foreign policy. I'll be clear about that. But what he's doing for a discussion of economic justice and socialism and Wall Street, this is wonderful, and it's great that education is happening for the Democratic Party. But the party has a track record, which is that it runs protest candidates while the party still continues marching to the right. So we try to get the word out. Yes, support Bernie in whatever way you think is right, but you need an insurance policy, you need a plan B, because the odds are pretty overwhelming that the kill switch will be exercised. And we need to continue building on that great work that Bernie's campaign is doing. We need to be prepared to run with it. So we're here to encourage people to tune into the campaign and be a part of it, because the purpose of this campaign is to lift up the work of what you're doing. This is where we spend our time, in Dallas, in Denton, in New Orleans, in Ferguson, in New York City, in Eric Garner's community. That if you go to our Facebook page, you'll see that our campaign trail is all about lifting up the struggles in our community, which is what a presidential race should be about, for God's sake. Not about Wall Street and about secret emails and how many tax breaks we can give to corporations because they don't have enough tax breaks. It's mind-boggling to watch these debates where the kinds of things that Donald Trump is saying, or even Jeb Bush for that matter, that gets cheered. That gets cheered only because they handpick their audience and they keep people out who might represent, the reality. So they tell us we're powerless, but it's really important to remember we are powerful.
That's right.
We have the numbers. We got the solutions. It's not rocket science. It's all about resisting the propaganda of powerlessness and asserting the true power that we have to stand up, fight like our lives depend on it, because they do, reject the lesser evil, and fight like hell for the greater good. That's what we are. We are the greater good. You guys are the greater good.
Which is why I ran for city council last May.
Oh, awesome.
And I did the same thing because
Great.
I knew because of the bot system that they have, and the golden boy that was in my district the number one in my district, Robert Rivera, and you can't beat the guy. And I was like, I'm going to run just to get up there and to tell people, look, and I told him, I said, we're the power. I said, we're the majority. I said, we just need to get out of our seats and get up here.
And let me recommend to you what our secret weapon is. And if word gets out about the secret weapon, it may be a self-fulfilling prophecy. And let me tell you what it is. Because you may want to use the secret weapon too. There are 40 million young people who are trapped in debt, for whom there is no way out.
40 million.
Student loans.
There you go, exactly. Now, 40 million in a three-way presidential race is just about enough to win it. If you add in the African Americans who haven't been denied the vote yet, who dare to come out and actually vote outside the system that is screwing them and everybody else, you put that together, you put it together with the Latino community, 25 million. Latinos who have the vote, who've been shown that the Democrats are the party of deportation and the Republicans are the party of hate and fear.
Wow.
So time to move out. If we get together around this agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit, that's what it is. It's pretty simple. We can't do any one of those without the other. This is a joint agenda. If Latinos, if Black Lives Matter, the climate community, but even if it's just young people alone who have every reason to come out and cancel their debt by checking the green box, because we are the only ones, we are the only campaign that will cancel debt, the only one. The others are talking about free public higher education, maybe in the future, maybe in the future. You know, we're saying we bailed out the bankers, let's bail out the students.
Yes, Jubilee, a Jubilee.
Of that.
Right.
It was the bankers' waste, fraud, and abuse that got us into this economic mess, which young people are paying the price for more than anyone, and for whom that is impossible to repay. So we're getting the word out to young people. We're starting chapters in high schools, in colleges and community colleges and so on. Chapters for the campaign so that young people have the tools that they need to get the word out. It's that simple. Just show up to vote, register to vote if you're not, show up to vote, and we can actually fulfill that self-fulfilling prophecy if the word gets out. So they may have all these complicated reasons about why we can't win, but in fact, if we just get that word out.
You know, one of the things that I like about the Green Party is that when you're trying to vote for Democrat or Republican, a lot of folks, that invisible block that you don't see of those that have felonies. With the Green Party ticket, you're not really concerned about, you know, felonies, but you have that huge block of folks, like she was talking about, I call them the invisible folks.
Yes.
I can't come out and vote because I've got a felony or this and y'all are really just encouraging people to vote.
Yes.
But that other entity is holding that, what you talk about, that box over their head, and that box keeps people from jobs, that box keeps people from housing, that box keeps people from even certain things, education, that box keeps people from even health care. You know, it's just like, like when you go to Baylor, like I went into Baylor and I was ill and they swiped my debit card. They swiped it in the emergency room. You imagine a person who's sick, who due to the box doesn't have a good job, can't get a debit card. You gotta wait 6-7 hours in Parkland, but if you want to go to a good hospital, you have to have that financial thing, but you got that box to keep you from having the money to even get health care.
It's outrageous.
Yeah.
Yes, and in fact, the racial, what should we say, the violence, it's really violence inside of a healthcare system. It's another form of violence. There's economic violence, there's police violence, there's health violence. And when you add up the health impact of being African American together with the health impact of being denied education, do you know what the average loss of life is? It's staggering. You know, some people think, oh, it might be a year or two. Maybe that's the difference. It's 14 years. 14 years of life that are denied the average African American who's also been denied education.
I was reading somewhere this morning that it was 7. It was 7.
It's 7 without adding the impact of poor education.
Right.
But those two things usually come together. And they compound each other, and it makes it 14 years. It's mind-boggling.
And we're having more and more African American men die at like the age of 53,
Absolutely.
49, and and it's so. And then when we start talking about the impact of African American women and Latino women who have HIV issues,
Yes.
and how you have to fight to get the medication or just the proper funding so you can go and get tested. That is again, we call that medical apartheid. We call that medical apartheid. It's a systematic way of destroying a people that you don't want to empower.
Right.
So that's why we're saying.
Deserts and
Food
people
deserts.
Right,
of
right,
color
right,
being
right,
shunted
right, right,
to highly
right.
polluted areas. Now, I
Right.
have a question, and maybe this is crazy on my part, but sometimes when I look at the Republicans, I think, this is so loud. It's so crazy. Is this a ploy to get people to vote Democratic? Because people will be, but supporting neoliberalism by scaring people, because that's what I hear Dems say all the time. We cannot have a Republican. I don't care if
Anything
it's
but that.
anything. And but wait a minute, you're supporting someone who supported the TPP, is supporting the TPP, has supported tar sands, has been like Hillary, and of course Obama too, fracking worldwide, the war crimes. What's the difference except on social issues, supposedly?
Exactly. Yes. I find it very helpful to sort of step back a little bit from the immediate questions and get people to try to look at the track record of this politics of fear. So it's important to give it a name. It's called the politics of fear, and it tells you that we have to silence ourselves and settle for the lesser evil, because the politics of fear tells you that you have to vote against what you fear the most rather than for your deeply held values. So it's fair to say that people who call them progressives, call themselves progressives, have been operating with that strategy since at least Bush, Nader, Gore. Okay, so at least the last 15 years. What do we have for it? Okay, and it's very important to look at the track record under Barack Obama, where we had not only a Democratic progressive president, but 2 Democratic houses of Congress, until people got so pissed off that they threw the Democrats out of Congress, so they brought that on themselves. But they had 2 years to show, at a time of real crisis, what can we do with this politics of fear? And what did we get? We got all those things we were afraid of that told us to vote for the politics of fear in the first place. So we have a motto that goes, the politics of fear has brought us everything we were afraid of.
Right.
Make that connection. We have to be the moral compass for our democracy. If our democracy does not have a set of guiding values, then it will run amok, which is what it is doing. But under Obama, compare Obama to Bush. Bush, 700 million in bailouts. Under Obama, 17 trillion and counting. 17 trillion in bailouts for Wall Street. Look at the wars, It was because of George Bush, actually, that we withdrew from Iraq. George Bush had written a deadline, a withdrawal date, after which troops could not have...
But they're trying to rewrite that history now.
Of course they are, So now it's, but for the record, it's clear that Obama has massively expanded the war on terror. And we're seeing that today with the declaration that, no, we're not getting out of Afghanistan because we've been so successful there. We're going to keep the troops there. And they will grow, you can be sure. And now we're duplicating that success all over the Middle East. And we're going to bring it to China and to Ukraine and so on. Yes, and Syria above all. In Syria, in fact, we're going to go to nuclear war in the airspace, creating a no-fly zone if Hillary Clinton has her way. So just the point here is that we need to be political therapists and help people break up with an abusive political relationship.
Absolutely.
And it really helps to just point out the track record of where people are going with the Democratic Party, and to point out what specifically Obama's record is on immigrant deportations. Off the charts, way worse than anybody.
Deporter-in-chief.
Yes,
Deporter-in-chief. Wow.
Attacking our civil liberties, more convictions of press under the Espionage
Reagan
Act.
marijuana dispensaries is my worst.
Yes.
So.
It's like, have 5 examples that you can rattle off when you're talking to people. And when they try to tell you how afraid they are, jump to a higher plane and point out that the politics of fear, well, you know what? We've been employing this strategy for a while. Let's see where it gets us.
insanity.
not only do you get bad Democrats, but people stop coming out to vote. And we
Right.
saw that in
I
2014.
hear that all
And
the time.
we have a low, terrible turnout in
Yeah.
this state, and the Texas Democrats are utter losers.
Yes.
Presenting,
They're
lukewarm-
horribly organized.
Yeah,
Yeah.
terribly
They're
organized.
horribly
There you go.
organized.
But bought off.
Yeah, yes. Well, that's why, we've actually run more green candidates for more office in Texas than any other state. I mean, it's also that you're big, but there's a lot of room for growing here. We had a candidate run for state rep in Laredo, I believe, who got around, if I'm not mistaken, around 40% of the vote. So, it's not hard to come in where the Democrats have created an incredible vacuum, which is all over the United States of America. There is a political vacuum. People are not coming out to do this. And, it's a vacuum that's begging to be filled. And I guess this was the other point I think really needs to be made, is that we need to rebel in the streets, but we need to rebel in the voting booth, too.
You see my
Oh,
shirt.
I love this.
I've got a
We need to rebel in the voting booth, because
Right,
if we
right.
don't do that and we only rebel in the streets, we will
Right.
be demolished and thrown under the bus in a second. They can
Yep.
undo our work with
Yeah.
the blink of an eye. So
That's right.
we need a political rebellion as well. It's not easy. The
That's
struggle
that's
is
the
long.
harder than get them to the voting booth.
Yeah, because in here, in the environmental community, it's solidly Democratic.
Yeah, yeah. Often the leadership is, but the rank and file is breaking away.
Good.
Look at, for example, look at what just happened in Guatemala, which they don't want you to know about, so it doesn't get much press around here. But, Guatemala was invaded, suppressed, the site of death squads, U.S. death squads, since the 1950s on behalf of United Fruit, right?
Yeah,
We went in,
I had a
we went in
friend
to
that
shore up
came
United
here
Fruit.
from there illegally, so he was telling me that.
Yeah, yeah, and we created, as much democracy in Guatemala as we're creating everywhere else.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes. In many ways, the rules of the game got written in Guatemala, and about a month ago, Guatemala had a little revolution, if you could call it that. Basically, they started coming out because they've been ruled by death squads since
Right.
1950, and people started coming out to having these protest marches once a week. This is like how the wall came down in East Germany. People
Right.
just started
Yeah.
marching once a week, and the marches got bigger and bigger, till where it was such a humiliation and embarrassment in East Germany, in East Berlin, that they called out the troops, told them to fire. The troops said no, and the president left town immediately, and was gone, and the government fell. In Guatemala, so many people came out that the parliament felt their necks were at risk, and so they agreed to strip the president of his immunity, and he was taken to jail that night.
Hooray.
Yeah, right. So the battle isn't over. It's
Yeah,
it's one thing to go from protest to, and another to go to victory. And Greece is another case in point. This is an ongoing struggle. They're not out of the woods, but at least they have power still, and they can look for cracks in the framework to move things in the right direction.
Unfortunately, their so-called leftist leaders betrayed them.
Yes, but not entirely.
Okay.
Not entirely, and they are still.
They were squeezed.
Yeah, they were in a difficult position. I don't want to justify what they did, but I do want to say that it's not over in Greece.
Yeah,
It's-
that is true.
It's not over. And what Greece began doing with Syriza, and they may have to change their party, but what they started doing about 5 years ago was realizing it wasn't enough to march. They also had to be a political party. And it took
Right.
about 5 years, well, longer than that actually, because they had small parties that were building towards that for a long time. But it finally kind of reached critical mass 5 years ago. They were about 3% in the polls, and within 10, 15 years, they suddenly, no, less than that. It was like 7 years for them to go from 3% to 37% and become the dominant political force.
Correct.
So it happens, and it makes the point. We have to, we got to organize politically. Running for office is a great way to do it. Becoming involved in political campaigns, if not your own, is another really great way to do it.
Right.
And because the Green Party is the one non-corporate party, People's Party, that actually still has a national base, it's kind of become the umbrella for the Socialist Alternative and the ISO, although Socialist Alternative is, they're sort of supporting Bernie's campaign at this point. They're not definitely in our camp, but outside of that strategy, we're all kind of coming together using the Green Party ballot lines to advance an agenda which is pretty much shared by the groups of the left, to some extent shared by libertarians increasingly as well, in terms of being an agenda of by and for the people. And we're... Ooh, whoops.
My bad.
No, go ahead.
If you grab that out of the way.
Are you ready to go?
Just about. Did you have last things you were
I have
gonna
one
say?
question
Yes.
to ask you while I'm doing this. I'm going to take you back into the Middle East,
Yes.
as well as the kind of the Asian continent as well, with Russia.
Oh, yeah.
In the Middle East now with Syria. I kind of see a bigger picture taking place right now as if we're in the early stages of World War IV. Am I?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm out there, but you know, am I? Or is my perception not completely wrong that this could go very bad?
And very quickly. Yes. I mean, this is, you don't even have to go to China and Russia to find the makings of World War III or IV, whatever you want to call it.
Well, actually, it could be 5 if you wanted to count the Cold War as a war.
Yeah, there you go. Right. But the next World War, the groundwork is all there. And unfortunately, the U.S. is not playing the role of a mature world leader. We've been very quick to engage in a belligerent and unproductive way, in all kinds of ways, whether you're looking at climate negotiations or, Ukraine. We had promised when the wall came down in East Germany that we were not going to move NATO 1 inch east of Berlin. That was the terms under which the wall came down. The Warsaw Pact disappeared. And then suddenly U.S. missiles and nuclear weapons start appearing in Europe and surrounding Russia. You may remember we were very upset when Russia was sending missiles to Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
One site. We now have, 3 or 4 sites of nuclear weapons and an additional several sites of missiles surrounding Russia. So if we were upset about the Cuban Missile Crisis, you can imagine how destabilizing this is right now to Russia and Eastern
region.
Europe. Yes. So, and likewise, let me add, nuclear weapons, there are a lot of them. They don't exist at this point in Iran. They don't exist. And according to many national security agencies in Israel and in the United States, Iran has no intention of building a nuclear weapon. Nonetheless, we did get a treaty to prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon. That's great. However, there are 15,000 nuclear weapons right now between the U.S. and Russia. Who pulled out of the treaties? The U.S. pulled out of that process when we abandoned the anti-ballistic missile treaty.
Right, which was Reagan.
80s. Yes, under Reagan.
Even
Exactly.
Reagan was all for let's get rid of all of the nukes.
Yeah, yeah. And then
What's happened?
Under Clinton, Putin, who everybody's anxious to make the next Saddam Hussein, Putin actually proposed that if the U.S. would pull its missiles out of Russia's neighborhood, that Russia would help, would basically agree to reducing our missile stocks down to 1,000 each, from 15,000 down to 1,000 each, and then convene all the countries to basically get rid of them. You can't have non-proliferation unless you have disarmament.
Correct.
We've done that thing for long enough. So Russia has, taken some steps forward that the U.S. has refused to take them up on. In fact, in 2012, according to the former president of Finland, Russia had actually offered to initiate a peace process in Syria that would include having Assad step aside, back in 2012. Who said no to that? We did, And we're talking about the Russians being intransigent and refusing to budge on Assad. Well, they have indicated some ability to be rational adults and negotiate on behalf of the people of the world. the U.S. is playing the role of a backyard bully more often than not here on the global stage. And this is really quite an embarrassment to the people of the United States. And let me just say that what Hillary Clinton proposed on stage amounted to a declaration of World War III. Because creating a no-fly zone when you have a nuclear-armed country that's already in the airspace, invited legally under international law, invited by Syria, to help them deal with the rebels, many of whom are Al-Qaeda. We seem to suddenly be protecting Al-Qaeda. Suddenly Al-Qaeda is our best friend, and we're outraged that the Russians, how dare they bomb rebels who are not ISIS. That's the language, the convoluted language they're actually using. Russia dares to bomb people who are not ISIS. What they need to say there is Russia dares to bomb Al-Qaeda. Now, Syrian politics is complicated. That's why we need a peace process.
Right.
That's why flying airplanes among nuclear-armed nations who suddenly the U.S. has declared nobody can be in our airspace, it boggles the mind that someone could say that on stage and not be immediately challenged by everyone else on that stage. But we didn't hear that.
Nope.
We heard other parties say, no, let's arm the Syrians, because, I'm sorry, let's arm the Saudis. Let's help the Saudis fight this battle, because the Saudis are such a good surrogate for
They're too
us,
busy
right?
killing Yemenis with our drones
With
and our bombs and our
weapons. Yes,
airplanes and
exactly.
our everything.
So the bottom line is, this is not rocket science. This is about stepping up to the role of being mature participants in the global community. And our leaders have been miserable failures at that. They are showing themselves to be corporate stooges and schoolyard bullies. And we need to vote the bums out and elect some real representation for us. And whether we get all the way there in this election, or whether we simply establish a bigger base from which to launch the next one, and encourage the local candidates and the local networks that are fighting this fight in our communities where the victories are easier to attain.
Right.
Often, not always, but often. This is nothing but a win-win for all of us to stand up and fight and be a part of this team to say no to lesser evil, to fight for the greater good, and let's get organized in this campaign, in our local campaigns, in the Green Party and other affiliated local parties, and let's take our future back. Democracy's in our hands, justice is in our hands, peace is in our hands. Let's just stand up and make it so.
Well, the thing
Thank
is,
you.
there's nothing else for us to do.
Yeah.
It's not going to come from the political establishment. It's not going to come from our economic leaders. I think you're being charitable to them by just calling them bullies. I would call them
She has to maintain a certain decor.
demonic sociopaths. And I can say that here in Texas.
And because he's a social worker. You can use that.
Yeah, because I see the carnage. I see the carnage, but it's not going to. We have to use the system somewhat, but we have to see beyond it. Use what we have here to go beyond it, because as it is, to me, the United States is a terrorist state, and our political institutions are unjust, racist, and violent, and inhuman.
Well, it still has a slave mentality. It's slave owner plantation mentality.
Yeah, that's true. And for employees, and I hear it so often. So, thank you.
And I think, it's a local strategy question as to what's the issue to kind of bring people together. Maybe fracking,
And that has, but there needs to be
Other
the
social
broader
issues.
issue, and for me, it's capitalism. It's the unjust economic system and the political powers that are protecting that interest and advancing it against the people. And that's where our commonality is, because if you look at other issues, it all stems back
It does.
to that. And for us in Dallas, we have the power elites who control this place here. Though we do have some good people in city council, there's people who aren't elected who control the operations and set the tone. And that's the enemy.
Absolutely.
That is our common enemy, and I would love to hear more about that. how can we organize
Yes.
to move forward, not as special interests, which is not special interests, it's just
Yes.
legitimate interests, but how can we come together to advance our political agenda?
Yes.
That's the $60 question.
Well, let
$60
me
million question.
reflect on that just briefly. In a way, what you're identifying is the importance, the critical importance of political education.
Yeah.
But what I've learned out there in the front lines of organizing, especially during elections, where you have the attention of many people briefly.
Right.
You know, you got 30 seconds to make your case, if even. You don't want to be educating. The phrase is used, if you're educating, you're losing in an election. You can't educate. You have to speak to voters where they're hurting right now. And usually it's economic above all else. It's usually economic. Even if people care to the hilt about the climate and related stuff, they're worried about how they're going to survive till tomorrow. And it's usually their housing, or it's police violence, or it's
Health.
Health, although it's hard to organize on health, to tell you the truth. It's very hard to use health as an organizing issue. Because, I mean, the reason is when people get concerned about health, they're usually sick.
I was going to say they can't make it out.
Right. It's all that they can do to organize about health. It's harder to make it a bigger
Unless
issue.
it's like children's health, and like here, asthma is child asthma.
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
that's right. And then it's directly tied into a broader issue. It's not just
Right.
about healthcare and going
Right.
to the
Right,
doctor.
that's where you can bring in the environmental aspects of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's different in different communities. You know, the question is where are people hurting, and then you want to build a campaign that focuses on what people are hurting most on. So if you look at kind of where the successes are in the United States, in Richmond, California, where they basically elected a Green mayor and this they brought together a progressive coalition of progressive Democrats and Greens. And that was based on having Chevron as an occupying force, which would be horrible and which posed a real safety threat and which exploded. So that was a big part of their coalition. It was also jobs. And then housing. We had a ginormous foreclosure crisis. And that seems to be what kind of brought them together, and those were also the issues that they were able to really move on. Very exciting to see how they've continued to thrive despite enormous amounts of money that have been thrown against them. If you look at Shama Sawant and the living wage campaign, living wage campaign.
In
That
Seattle?
is a great one for engaging large numbers of people.
Right.
Workers, though, were somewhat organized in Seattle, and it might be different here in Dallas. It's harder to organize.
It is. This is
Well, it's hard to organize in a right-to-work state.
Actually, the Texas UU Justice Ministry just picked living wage as their number one
that's
issue
great.
for the
That's
next
great.
legislative session.
Yes.
I mean, they had three to choose from.
Yep.
But that was the number one. The next one
Yep.
was Planned Parenthood, or not Planned Parenthood, reproductive justice.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. Great.
And then the third one was probably voting. I'm not sure. I just read it this morning. So.
Right, and I think that's exactly what you want to do. You want to think about who are the constituencies that can be mobilized in the community. Who's there that can be mobilized? Can you get those groups together and come up with really a campaign? And then you want a campaign that has a movement component, so it's not dependent on the electoral cycle. And then you want to have a political campaign that lifts it up, where you can, the name of the game is getting people out who are willing to go knock on doors.
Right.
Absolutely.
Because if you get people who are willing to come out, the issue means enough to them. It could also be to stop the war, because people are really beginning to feel that here at home, and
Veterans,
it's increasingly outrageous.
Especially the veterans, because of the lack of.
I've heard
Healthcare.
terrible stories.
Care,
about
period.
The VA.
Yes.
Yeah, I got lots of veterans because I'm on DFW Normal also. I'm a member of DFW Normal, so
great.
that's why when you said bring these groups together, and we're trying to do that here.
Yes.
Even since 2005 when I joined DFW Normal, we had groups saying let's join together, and I'm like okay, but how do you do it? Nobody could do it, and we're still struggling today. It's like how do we get these different groups?
In part, it depends on leadership in those groups, understanding that divided we are conquered.
Right.
And it's that sea change in the thinking of the leadership of the groups that enables it to happen. And so you want to begin that dialogue, And clearly the people who are here, today get it and represent big, big networks. And there are holes in that network, and so you want to see if you can identify key people in those networks that can become part of it.
We did have a coalition that formed protesting ALEC. ALEC had their national convention here last
July.
year.
Yeah, July of last year.
And there's a lot of ALEC supporters
Yes.
in this city and here.
Yes.
And we had like 500 people show up at the protest, but there was groups coming together to prepare for that and who have met afterwards.
Yeah.
But the thing that concerns me is that we have hardly any time addressing climate disruption, and people are afraid. Environmentalists are afraid to put it. And I agree that we have to during election periods hit on where people are concerned, but we do have to let people know your child's future is how to I mean, yes, do the education before the election, but how to make it an election campaign issue.
Yes.
Yeah, because the knowledge and fracking is a no-no to talk about.
Right. Okay. So let me tell you where it's been successful, and in my own struggle over the years to get people to listen to this, and it's about connecting jobs with energy transition and emergency energy transition.
Right.
So we put front and center that we need a Green New Deal to address the economic emergency that we have and the climate emergency. And we usually put economic emergency first because that's, as far as people are concerned, that's what they got to deal with. And if you can find a way to make a demand locally for green energy jobs, that's a really great way to get people to engage in a campaign. So if you have a candidate who is calling for, we demand that City Hall move its subsidies from fossil fuels to green energy jobs, and we're going to do 3 times as many jobs with that money. And we will
also
provide the
municipally
transition
owned or community-owned sources of energy, where it reduces costs for people.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
That's where you want to focus. And around that, then you can then begin to educate people about the drought, et cetera. Other things that people, the rising cost of food, the rising cost of water.
Just put
because of fracking.
Exactly.
14 to
A
18
bill
gallons
or
of oil.
economic. This is the cost of this. This is the cost to you because of this. This is the cost to you.
You want to You want to always lead with kind of the job opportunity, and your programs to deal with that, and then you educate people. You don't want to sort of scare people without them kind of knowing there's a solution first. Otherwise, they just.
By the way, then you're talking like Republicans.
Well, I like what you said about the corporate stooges in office, because the majority of the people in Arlington, especially on the council, voted for the people who voted for HB 40, but they were down there protesting against HB 40, but yet the people they voted in voted for it. I'm like,
and remind me, HB 40, that was
House Bill 40. Yeah, statewide, where they have control of all underground. Yeah.
Well, it did not allow, it prohibited municipalities to pass home rule regulations that affect business interests.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, is there a potential for a campaign to repeal HB 40?
There's a group ready to do it now. I think it's called something like that, repeal HB 40 or something,
and
or
to
reform
incorporate
HB 40.
that into a new kind of local campaign about what HB 40 means. Does HB 40 apply beyond fracking? I mean, does it
I think so.
Yes.
Well, it's anything underground.
Right.
Any mineral rights underground and any activity by companies underground, not necessarily above.
It means that the state rules.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, that's a great local campaign, because it says
Definitely
that
is.
we need to control our water. Hello, we're going to give our water sources away. Yeah.
I know we're on water restrictions, but yet
You
they
are?
can. Yeah,
well,
but
that
yet they
makes
can.
for a great
Yet they can
campaign.
spend 14 to 18 million gallons per well. So
Yeah. And
each time,
people are
and then
under
it's
water restrictions.
it's unreusable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's been.
Well, they
fracked.
may want to use it without telling the public,
Yeah,
like
seen
sprinkling
that.
frack water on
Fruits, vegetables,
yes, on
farming.
streets,
There are
roads.
ads.
It's actually
there are
happening in
ads for-
California.
There are ads for fracking water.
Yeah.
There are people who want to buy them. Like, why are they buying fracking water?
It's
Yeah.
it's
Oh my God.
criminal.
Yeah.
It's just
And then they have the injection wells in Irving, which is causing the earthquakes.
yeah.
So the injection wells, do you know what the injection wells are? Where they take
Yeah,
the fracking
yes,
water
yes,
and
right.
inject
Yeah.
it in the ground, leave it there.
And where is Irving?
It's
Irving
just
is-
west.
23
right
miles
next to
west.
I
us.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a
Um,
And that's
suburb
where the.
inside.
Did you fly into DFW Airport?
DFW.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
If you flew into DFW, it's basically that area where the
Yeah.
airport is,
I
Yeah.
see.
in that
Yeah.
area.
I mean,
Irving, Arlington, Fort Worth. All right.
Yeah.
And
Nick.
I see. Okay. So
Even
is Arlington
Dallas had
also feeling
earthquakes.
yours?
No, because we're
The
not doing
Dallas?
the injection wells. They're all happening in Irving, and all the earthquakes are happening in Irving.
I
But
see.
even Dallas experienced some quakes, not as bad as Irving or Tarrant County. Tarrant County and the surrounding areas are riddled
Yeah,
with
I see.
frack sites.
Yeah.
But even Dallas in December,
Yeah.
I think for the first time had
We had like
mild
4,
tremors.
yeah, we had 4 of them. One was like a 3.8, and I could feel it where I live, which is 10
Unbelievable.
miles from where
Wow.
the
The epicenter.
Right.
epicenter, thank
and
you.
where you're staying,
Yeah.
Fred felt it.
Oh, incredible. Yeah.
So,
Right. So I mean, all of this is the making of, of a really great campaign that offers community control over a really critical resource and protection from the scary things that people are experiencing now that are just a taste, just a
what's to
tiny
come.
taste of what's to come.
yeah, the F5 tornado is approaching. And then it's, well, I won't present it that way, but I see it.
Yeah.
No. That you can do that. You can do that once you have laid out that there's a solution and that it can be prevented. Failing to do that, opens the door here. It opens the floodgates, literally the floodgates.
Yeah, and I said, it's for our children.
And probably
their
for
children.
us too.
Well, for us too.
Yeah.
What did you say?
It's
Like a
the
couple of
time-
decades
Couple of decades.
for
No.
cities to be underwater?
For the coastline to be underwater. Yeah, and I don't know how far up that comes, but certainly Houston is
20,
at risk. Well, they're talking at least 10 feet, and they don't know what the upper limit of
Well, I
this
mean, how
is.
many
at
decades?
least 10 feet in the next within 50 years.
50 years.
Possibly
That
sooner
is-
if you listen to Michael Mann, who is
Oh,
the
is that so?
the NASA,
Yeah, Michael Mann, he's awesome.
right.
Yeah, where did he publish this?
I was watching him on Tom Hartman's program
Okay.
being interviewed Monday.
Okay, all right, I'll take a look at that. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's up there with Hansen. I mean, these guys
Yeah.
have not been wrong yet.
Yeah.
And
It's pretty scary what they talk about.
what they talk about is plenty. I mean, this is why what we say in our campaign, and I encourage everybody to use this language, this is an emergency. Drop everything. Whatever you're doing, stop. Because it's now or never. It's as if Pearl Harbor was just bombed, but it's 1,000 times worse than Pearl Harbor.
Right.
That's how serious it is. And this is not a Pearl Harbor that you recover from. So
Right.
it's now or never. And we can fix this if we actually start to act now. This is why we tell people the politics of fear, you know what you really need to be afraid of? You need to be afraid of continuing to do what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
You need to step up with actually fixing this.
Right.
And you got to fix it in the voting booth too, because it will not be fixed by political parties that are funded by fossil fuels, big banks, and war profiteers.
Yeah.
That's who's funding political establishment, as you know. So we got to fix this, okay? And we got to act like Pearl Harbor was just bombed. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, you know how long it took to convert the economy to a wartime footing?
Less than 12 months, wasn't it?
It was 6 months. 6 months, it was 25% of GDP was the war effort. Well, we're saying 15 years. We got a long time. In 15 years, we can convert to 100% wind, water, and sun, decommission our fracking towers, our nuclear power plants, our coal plants, all of it. We got 15 years to get it done. Guess what? If you don't have a job, now you got a job. If you have a part-time job, now you got a full-time job. We can put everybody to work, and here's the mind-boggling thing. The energy transition actually pays for itself in the health savings from fossil fuel sicknesses that are averted. And that's cancer, it's asthma, it's diabetes, it's learning disabilities. There are all kinds of ways that this stuff plays in. And then if you're also converting our food system so that we have a sustainable food system, you get even more yield from it. And those numbers haven't been run. But probably this whole thing pays for itself. Right now we are spending $1 trillion a year on the military-industrial security complex, which is
Insane.
not making us safer, it's making us more
Paranoid.
endangered.
Right.
Yes, for good reason. That's $1 trillion. In the sick care system, it's not a healthcare system, it's a sick care system. It makes us sick, and then it charges us a lot of money to try to recover, but we don't quite recover. We
Right.
just
Just-
run
I
the
call it
treadmill.
illness maintenance.
Illness maintenance, exactly.
Right.
The illness maintenance system costs us $3 trillion a year, 3 times as much as the
Yeah.
military industrial. So the factoids that go with this are that about 75% of chronic disease, that is the things that we're all sick with, that really cost our healthcare system the real bucks. 75% of this $3 trillion is preventable if we were eating the right food, if we had a healthy, local, sustainable food system, if we were not breathing pollution and dying from heart attacks and strokes and emphysema from air pollution, and if we had exercise. And this is the third component, actually, is a public transportation system that integrates active transit, safe bike paths, and sidewalks to get to our transit hubs.
Another sore spot for
Yeah.
Arlington. No transportation, no public transportation.
People
Well-
voted down
Yeah, and
consistently.
the things that you're saying that everybody doesn't like are the things I was saying, and they didn't like it.
In part, it's
Well, it's
breaking
always about
through-
who's going to pay for it. How is it going to get paid
Well,
for?
yeah,
And
which
it's-
is why I
it's
call
failing
it
to
mass
point
transit,
out.
not public transit.
Yes, there you go. Right. It's important to point out that it pays for itself. And that's why they don't like us to get into the dialogue or into the debate, because we can reframe this for people. It's framed in a very divided kind of way.
Oh, absolutely.
So, challenging power doesn't happen overnight. You have to learn how to do it. You have to run a campaign in order to learn how to run a campaign. And sometimes it takes a couple of cycles to begin to build your team,
No,
to
absolutely.
connect with others. I don't know if you've ever considered running as a green, but it helps bring certain infrastructure.
Now, do y'all
and
have
support.
training for
Yes,
people?
we do. We have candidate training,
Okay, that
which are part of training the team to help the candidate.
I have been asked
Yeah.
by Aaron if I'd be interested in
Okay.
running,
Oh,
but
awesome.
I don't have money.
Here's how it was pitched to me. This is
Welcome
how
to
I
the
got
political
picked.
world.
This is how I got picked into running for office. After having fought my butt off, like we're all doing all the time, I figured, oh, I'm a doctor. I'll just go talk to my legislator. I'll just work with other health groups, and we'll go, go organize a community, go talk to our legislators, and surely they don't know that we could actually fix this. We don't have to be killing people. We can actually be employing people instead of killing them, fixing this energy problem, et cetera, or the food problem. And, so the way it was pitched to me by the Green Party was, well, just do what you're doing, but call it a political campaign. That enables us to get you into the dialogue. And that's where you start. But from there, you actually develop the tools for how you do it. So you can just do what you're doing, and that's your baseline, but with a broader audience.
Yeah, I am a social worker. I have to get a job.
Yeah,
But this is the work I want to do full
Yeah.
time.
yeah.
But I haven't seen or found resources to
not
enable
there.
me. Excuse me?
By design, they are not there.
So,
Yeah.
but could someone be a candidate and be able to sustain themselves, pay their bills?
A lot of people run, they have their day job,
Yeah.
and they run, and they arrange to take a couple weeks off at election time.
Actually, for the campaign itself, you'll get donations. I didn't think I would, because
That's right.
I'm a real nobody in Arlington as far as the city, because I work outside of the city. I work with the small groups and churches. I'm a vice president at Pathways UU and
Oh,
Hearst.
fabulous. Oh, that's
And
great.
the
Oh,
people
great.
that knew me and
Yeah.
liked me, they're like, yeah, just run, the money will come. I'm like,
Yes. Yeah.
I doubt it, but I was getting $500, a couple $100. I was like, hey,
Yeah.
thanks, I appreciate it.
Exactly.
So-
Right, and that'll enable you to pay the cost of your campaign.
Right, which is
and
what it
phones
did.
and-
And I didn't even really put myself out there that much as I should have, because I was working. And actually,
It takes a
that's
while.
what happened during the campaign, is I think I got a whiff of that LABC drill site, because that was the day it blew, the first day I started block walking, and that's the day I got sick.
Wow.
And I couldn't block walk for more than 1 hour, and I was dead tired, more than I've ever been in my life. And then after that, I started getting sicker and started showing more symptoms. And I got so sick that I had to miss work twice because I was like, I just can't even get up.
Wow, I did
So
not
I went
know
to the
that.
doctor, and they like, your red blood count is through the roof, and that's causing your blood pressure to go to the skyrocketed too. So they're polycythemia is what they're saying. They're like, you're too young for that, and
Oh my God, wow.
but they don't. There's nothing else. I took all the tests, they all come back negative, and I'm like, but now I'm feeling better. So I'm like,
Oh,
good.
No
incredible.
wonder you were missing. I am so sorry.
The weird thing is, though, is I've gotten better. I feel a lot better now. And then I drove by the new Lamar drill site, which you'll be seeing tomorrow in Arlington, on the freeway, and I just a whiff of the thing, and after that,
and you
the
felt
next
that
day I
again?
started feeling symptoms again. I'm like, that quick and that easily?
It could happen. I mean, this is the kind of thing that we don't have studies for,
Yeah.
you know, and
And they
just
don't
because
want
you
studies
don't-
for.
Right, exactly.
And
Just
they definitely
right,
don't want studies.
right. Absence of proof is not proof
Right.
of absence.
Right.
You know, not having the proof to show a connection does not mean that that connection does not
Right.
exist.
Right.
And you know, it's entirely plausible that both food things or pollutants that we are exposed to through food, through water, and through air do funny things to our immune systems that can happen like that.
Well, I was
They
telling
can
my
really
wife this
trigger
morning,
stuff.
I think what it is it's probably triggering something in my endocrine system because when they test me, there's nothing in me,
Sure.
and then there's nothing, I have no disease or whatever. So it's got to be that. It's triggering something in my body when I smell it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Yeah, and this
that
is
so
going by the track side. Is that it? What
yeah,
is
drove
it?
by. Well, the first time I was campaigning north of when on the day LABC blew up,
And what was the LABC?
Lake Arlington Baptist Church drill site. They had a blowback,
I see.
which almost ended up in a blowout. And you'll hear about that. And you're going to drive by the site tomorrow too. So,
Well, I need a list of places to go to.
Rick Donna's already got it all.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's got it organized.
Is
so
she going to be driving?
She will be driving.
Oh,
it.
Oh,
fabulous.
okay,
Oh, that's
good.
great.
So you'll be going by
Wonderful.
Lamar, which is the newest one we have, actually the newest drill site.
Yeah.
Because each drill site has several
Yeah.
wells. So
Yeah.
this is the newest formed drill site.
Do you have written down somewhere your experience with this?
No, I haven't written it down yet. I can.
Can you just jot down?
Actually, I think
a couple
I-
critical
I have it
details?
recorded.
Because actually I have a map of where I was walking that day that details that I was on that day during that time,
Yeah.
which
You
is
know,
north of the drill site. So I was
Just a couple little things, because on the campaign trail, sometimes you have time to tell stories that just speak volumes. And this is so powerful. And to say that you've gone from that, well, actually, you were a candidate before you got mobilized with your health stuff.
yeah, it happened as I was
Yeah.
campaigning, which I didn't realize what it was until
Yeah.
after the campaign was over,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I was actually on that day just north of that drill
Yeah.
site. And of course, I looked for plume results, and they didn't have any because they didn't report the incident till hours later.
Yeah.
And then they
Yes,
still
of
tried
course.
to control it by mud
Of course, right.
until the next 9 o'clock next morning. And it happened at 11.
Well, our state regulators do not regulate.
Of course not.
They're totally controlled
That's
by
what
the
they're
oil
paid
and
for.
gas
Yes.
industry.
Yeah.
Totally.
That's the reason our new agricultural commission.
Oh, jeez. Anyway.
Yeah, what's that doing?
They want, what they say, they said they're going to promote more energy jobs, more energy jobs, which means
More energy
fracking.
And they denied, even though the report came out that fracking is causing earthquakes, TCEQ, Texas
Environmental Quality Control.
Control, not, said, oh no, the earthquakes have been having in Argyle, which are northeast of here. No, that wasn't caused by fracking, even though it's clear
By
that
two
fracking.
universities.
Yes, two
SMU
universities.
and I think UTA.
Yeah, and just that's what we're struggling. That's
Yes,
what we're having
yes,
to deal with. A
right.
criminal state.
Yeah,
Period.
a Trump
Yeah.
state, a Donald Trump state. Everybody here seems to be
Oh,
cheering
well,
him on.
That's more like a David and Charles Koch state.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well,
Alex state.
Remember this, you know, Republicans are actually 20% of the American people. 20%.
But they vote.
Maybe, exactly. And maybe Donald Trump might be, I don't know, what is he running in the polls? Like 30% of Republicans? are voting?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's
30, so he's 30% of 20%, okay?
Uh-huh.
So he's about 7% of the
Yeah.
American public. So this is part of the propaganda campaign
Right.
to make you feel entirely powerless and useless.
Absolutely.
And this is why, it's important not to be deterred, not to be discouraged by it, not to, spend all our waking hours ruining the day, but really focusing on our power and our outrage and really acting strategically about how do we pull people together. Because the name of the game is getting people out to vote
right.
because there's something to vote for. People are not going to come out to vote against Donald Trump. They're going to come out to vote for jobs and health and schools and an end to police violence.
Making America great again.
For us, yes, we are America. Hello.
Yes.
It's not Donald
Yeah.
Trump is not America. We are
Well,
America.
not according, liberals aren't part of America.
Donald Trump is a foil on America. So, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay,
great.
good.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that
Yeah,
you're
no,
okay.
thank you. Yeah, no, this was great. I'm very
Thank
glad
you.
we
This
had
was
a
very
chance.
good, and it's.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
for being a part of
We'll
this.
do more.
Great.
I'm going to turn this
It's
off
so-
now.